At my wedding, my mom humiliated me by demanding my entire $8,500 salary, saying, "If you want to be a wife, then start by paying me rent for raising you." When my bridesmaids laughed, I froze, then my grandma whispered, "Your mom did the same to me." But I never spoke. The room fell silent. Luca leaned in close during the reception and whispered, "Do you want me to make her leave?" I blinked at him, still frozen, my wine glass trembling in my hand. My mom had just stood up in front of nearly 60 people, my closest friends, Luca's family, co-workers, my bridesmaids, and demanded that I hand over my entire salary as back rent for raising me. I couldn't find my voice. Then my grandmother, quiet as ever, leaned toward me and said, "She did the same to me, but I never said a word." The entire room, moments before filled with laughter and clinking glasses, fell into a stony, cold silence. I'd always known my mom could be cruel. But what happened at my wedding pulled back the curtain on something so much deeper, something rotten that had been passed down through generations, and something I now had to decide whether to end. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who posted about family drama. But here I am. I need a place to write this out, maybe for advice, maybe for clarity, maybe just to stop the loop from playing in my head every night before bed. I, 31 female, got married last fall to the love of my life, Luca, 34 male, after 2 years of dating. We live in Madison, Wisconsin. I've worked my ass off to build a good life, went to college on a full scholarship, worked 2 jobs all through my 20s, and landed a logistics role that now pays me about $8,500 per month. That job helped me climb out of survival mode. For the first time, I had savings, comfort, and choices. But the truth is, my family, specifically my mother, never let me fully enjoy any of it. My mom, Renata, 60 female, raised me and my younger brother, Felix, 28 male, as a single parent. She loved to say she did everything herself, but what that really meant was that she made sure we never forgot we were a burden. Growing up, she'd praise me to others while berating me in private. "You think you're smarter than everyone, huh? That's why no one wants to sit with you," she'd sneer, then turn around and tell her coworkers how proud she was of her little honor student. Felix bore the brunt of it more visibly. She humiliated him, slapped him in public, and called him a failure before he hit middle school. I tried to shield him when I could, but I was a kid too. And somewhere along the line, I learned to survive by making myself small and obedient, anything to avoid the next explosion. I didn't realize until adulthood that what we were living through wasn't just tough love or a strict household. It was emotional abuse. But when you're in it, it just feels normal. After college, I moved out on my own and finally began carving out a life separate from my mother's grip. But even from a distance, she made her presence known. Every job promotion was met with suspicion. Every holiday, she picked fights if I didn't spend the whole day with her. And every boundary I tried to draw was met with guilt-laced outbursts. When I met Luca, I didn't tell my mom for months. I knew she'd find something to pick at, and she did. The first time I brought him home, she spent half the evening interrogating him about his job, software engineer, didn't impress her, and the other half accusing me of ignoring my real family. Still, Luca was patient. Understanding. He came from a close-knit, gentle family, and it almost shocked him how I tiptoed around everything. He encouraged me to get therapy, and I did. That's when I began seeing Amanda, who helped me realize how warped my idea of love and responsibility had become. By the time we got engaged, I had a better grasp of my mom's behavior. But knowing something and acting on it are two different things. Despite my better judgment, I invited her to the wedding. And I regret it. The wedding was small, about 60 people, mostly our friends, some of Luca's extended family, a few coworkers, and a handful of relatives on my side. I'd worked so hard to create something peaceful. Intimate. Just a single day that wasn't about stress or control or keeping the peace with someone who'd never return the favor. We rented a restored barn venue just outside of town. Early September. The trees were beginning to change. The weather was perfect. I wore a cream-colored dress with lace sleeves, something timeless, simple. Luca looked like he belonged in a movie, navy suit, soft smile, nervous eyes. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. My mother, of course, found reasons to be difficult even before the ceremony. She criticized the caterer, tacos? At a wedding, complained that her table wasn't near the front, and kept telling my aunt that the dress I picked was nice, but a little plain. She wasn't asked to give a speech, and she'd mentioned that multiple times in the days leading up. I raised you, Mira. I should get to say something. What's a wedding without honoring your mother? I deflected. Politely. Then more firmly. I'd rehearsed my boundaries in therapy. It's going to be a low-key event. We want to keep the speeches short, just the maid of honor and best man. She didn't push it further. Or so I thought. The first few hours went off without incident. People mingled, drank, danced under string lights. My cheeks hurt from smiling. I caught Luca looking at me like he couldn't believe he'd gotten so lucky. We held hands, kissed during our first dance. For a while, I really thought I'd made it. That she'd behave. Then the toasts began. Celine, my maid of honor, gave a beautiful, emotional speech about our friendship and the woman I'd grown into. People laughed, teared up. Then Luca's brother told a few goofy stories, ribbed him a little, and raised a glass. As the room clapped, I reached for my drink, already feeling relief. That's when I heard the clinking. Spoon on glass. I looked over, and there she was. Renata. Standing. Wine glass in hand. Smiling. She didn't wait for anyone to quiet down. I know I wasn't invited to speak, Renata said, loud enough for the entire barn to hear. But I'm the mother of the bride, and I think it's important that a few truths are said tonight. I felt my chest tighten. She turned slightly to face the guests, her wine glass still lifted like a prop. Her voice had that brittle sweetness she always used before a storm. Myra's done well for herself, she said. She's got this fancy job now, what, $8,500 a month? Isn't that right, honey? Some people chuckled, unsure if it was a joke. Luca's cousin actually said, "Whoa, go Mira," and laughed. But I knew what was coming. Renata kept going, her tone changing slightly, just enough that my spine stiffened. And now she's married, playing grown-up, pretending like she made it all on her own. Like she built this life by herself. Her smile faltered. Well, I think if she wants to act like an adult, maybe it's time she paid rent. Back rent. For 20-something years I raised her on my own. The room fell quiet. I didn't get help from her father. I worked 3 jobs. I went without so she could go to college. She never paid a dime of that back. Not 1 cent. Now she's living it up, and I'm supposed to smile and stay quiet. I was frozen. My hand gripped the stem of my glass so hard I thought it might snap. Some people laughed nervously. My bridesmaids glanced at me with tight-lipped confusion. One of Luca's uncles muttered something under his breath. My boss from work looked mortified. I stood still, like a statue. My throat closed. The heat climbed up my neck like fire. Then, from beside me, I felt a gentle hand slide over mine. My grandmother, Johanna, leaned in close. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look up. She did the same to me, she whispered. But I never said anything. Her words dropped like a stone in a pond. Everything rippled. My knees felt weak. I looked at her. She was looking straight ahead, her face calm, her voice even. But I saw the tears in her eyes. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what I was feeling. Shame? Rage? Shock? I turned to look at Renata, still standing there, waiting for applause or validation. She swirled her wine glass as if she hadn't just tried to publicly extort her own daughter. The silence in the barn dragged. Even the DJ didn't know what to do. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to run. But I didn't do any of those things. Luca stepped closer to me and asked, softly, "Do you want me to make her leave?" But I shook my head. "I'll handle it." What people often don't understand about mothers like Renata is how subtle the control can be. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just the constant whittling away of your self-worth. A snide comment here, a guilt trip there. Growing up under that, you learn to question every feeling you have. You think maybe I do owe her. Maybe she did work so hard. Maybe I am ungrateful. But hearing my grandmother, quiet, obedient, dutiful Grandma Johanna, say she'd been through the same thing? That cracked something in me. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern. A chain. A legacy of pain being passed down from one woman to the next. And suddenly, I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt angry. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to make a scene. That's what Renata wanted. She wanted chaos. Control. Attention. So I did the thing she hated the most. I turned my back. Without a word, I walked out of the barn and onto the patio. The breeze was cool, and the air smelled like pine and bonfire smoke. I stood by the railing, trying to breathe, trying to keep my hands from shaking. A minute later, Luca joined me. Then Celine. Then Felix. And finally, slowly, Johanna. No one said anything at first. We just stood there. I heard people inside murmuring. Music resumed, softly. The clink of glasses returned. But a different kind of energy hung in the air, heavier. I knew the mood had changed. I knew people would be talking about it for years. That was fine. Let them talk. What happened afterward was a blur. I didn't go back inside right away. The photographer found us and offered to take some more portraits outside, and I agreed. Anything to keep busy. Eventually, a few guests came out and offered hugs. Some avoided me altogether. Others kept glancing over like they were watching a car crash in slow motion. Renata stayed inside for a while, apparently talking loudly to a couple of my cousins about disrespect and entitlement. One of them told me later that she actually cried, not from embarrassment, but from anger that I hadn't acknowledged her sacrifice publicly. At some point she left without saying goodbye. I didn't stop her. Back in the hotel room that night, I collapsed into bed still in my dress. My whole body felt sore, like I'd run a marathon without moving. Luca sat beside me, rubbing my back gently. He didn't ask questions. He just stayed there until I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning to 4 missed calls from Renata. I didn't call back. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The days that followed were strange. Not terrible, not peaceful. Just strange. There's this idea that after your wedding, life begins. You're supposed to feel lighter, more connected. People kept telling me, "You looked so beautiful, and what a perfect night," and I nodded and smiled. But inside, it was like I hadn't come down from something. I was hovering just above my own life, watching it unfold in front of me. Luca was patient. He always is. He cooked us breakfast every morning that week while I sat at the kitchen table in my robe, staring at my phone. The missed calls had stopped, but texts from my mother started trickling in. Monday. I hope you're proud of humiliating me in front of everyone. Tuesday, you're really going to throw away your own mother for a man? Wednesday, what about family? What about loyalty? I didn't answer. Not once. Every message pulled something tight in my stomach, like an old reflex. Guilt. Fear. That deep, bone-set feeling that if I didn't make peace, something bad would happen. That I'd be alone. But I wasn't alone. Luca was there. And surprisingly, so was Felix. He called 2 days after the wedding. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. The last I'd known, he'd moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, after dropping out of community college and getting into some trouble with alcohol. We didn't have a falling out, just years of distance, both literal and emotional. We were like survivors from the same shipwreck who floated to opposite shores. But when I saw his name flash on my screen, I picked up immediately. "Hey," he said. His voice cracked a little. "I saw what happened. I didn't ask how. I assumed someone sent him a video. Or maybe one of the cousins filled him in. It didn't matter." "I'm sorry," I said, without thinking. He paused. "No," he replied. "I should have been there. I should have told you what she was before you had to find out like that." We talked for over an hour. About childhood, about therapy, about how for so long we both thought we were broken in different ways, but it was the same wound. Felix told me that when he was 19, Renata called the police on him after he refused to hand over his paycheck from his part-time job at the hardware store. She told them he was threatening her. He ended up spending the night in a holding cell. He moved out 2 weeks later, cut off contact, and never looked back. But now, hearing what she did to me at my wedding, he said, it all came rushing back. "I'm glad you didn't let her finish," he said. "I'm proud of you." No one had ever said that to me about something like this. Not in my family. Later that week, I visited Grandma Johanna. She lived alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment about 15 minutes from us. She was still active, crocheting, reading, always having a pot of tea brewing, but I hadn't spent nearly enough time with her over the years. Renata always made sure of that. "She's nosy. She'll twist everything," my mom would say. "She wants to steal your trust from me." She did it to her sister. But I went anyway. When she opened the door, she hugged me tightly, longer than I expected. "I've been waiting," she said. We sat on her little floral couch, the kind with the plastic slipcovers still clinging to the arms. She poured us chamomile tea and set out shortbread cookies on a chipped porcelain plate. I asked her what she meant at the wedding, about Mom doing the same to her. She didn't hesitate. "I gave your mother everything I had," she said. "When she was pregnant with you, her husband was already leaving. She moved in with me. Said it would only be for a few months. She stayed for nearly 7 years. She didn't work. She slept most of the day. I fed you, changed your diapers, took you to preschool." I stared at her, stunned. She told me she was exhausted, that I didn't understand what it was like to be a single mom. I did, actually. "I raised 3 girls after your grandfather died." But she didn't want to hear it. When Johanna asked Renata to start helping with groceries or even cleaning, she flipped. She called me selfish. Said I owed her, because I'd brought her into the world without asking. The phrase punched me in the gut. My mother had said the exact same thing to me during an argument when I was 17. "I finally asked her to leave," Johanna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She took you and Felix, and told everyone I'd kicked her out unfairly. I didn't correct her. I thought it was better to stay quiet. I see now that I was wrong. I didn't know what to say. My eyes stung, but I held it together. She taught you to feel small, Mira. She taught you that love had strings. But it doesn't. Real love doesn't make you pay it back." The following Sunday, Luca and I hosted a small brunch at our apartment. Just a few friends, some coworkers, and my Aunt Lizette, Renata's younger sister, who'd moved to Illinois years ago and kept her distance from the family. I didn't expect her to come. But she did. When she arrived, she hugged me hard, her eyes already red. "I watched the video," she said. I wasn't surprised. But I was still horrified. We sat on the patio together, plates balanced on our laps. "She's done it to all of us," Lizette said. "Me, your grandma, even herself. Everything is transactional to her. She can't give without expecting more back." I asked her if she still spoke to my mom. "Sometimes," she said. "But only when I have the energy to deal with the storm." She paused, then looked at me. "Don't let her guilt you. She's never going to admit what she's done. You don't need her to validate your pain to make it real." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. I think I'd been waiting for that. For someone to say, out loud, that I didn't need to justify cutting off contact. That it was okay to protect myself. Even from my own mother. I still hadn't responded to any of Renata's messages. They'd tapered off by then. The last one, sent the night before, simply read, "I see now you're no daughter of mine." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed the app, turned off my phone, and walked into the kitchen where Luca and Felix were laughing about something over a pile of dirty dishes. I stood there for a moment, watching them. Two people who'd seen different sides of my life, one who'd grown up in the darkness with me, and one who helped me find the light. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something shift. I wasn't ready to call it peace. But it was something close. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't sit in the dark with a notepad plotting her downfall. But something inside me knew, if I didn't take a stand, not just walk away, but really push back, then I'd never be free. And worse, I'd be letting that chain continue. Because people like my mother don't stop when you ask them nicely. They stop when there are consequences. The opportunity came about 6 weeks later. She reached out again, this time, a voicemail. Her voice was the same as always, that brittle calm trying to sound composed, but laced with resentment. "I don't want to fight. I think we should meet and talk. You're my daughter, and I deserve to be heard." I didn't reply. Instead, I called my grandmother and asked if she still had Renata's old paperwork from when she lived with her. She did. Turns out, a lot of it was bank statements, copies of letters, even an old eviction notice from a second-floor apartment downtown where Renata racked up months of unpaid rent before dumping the notice in Johanna's mailbox. "She told everyone I co-signed the lease," Johanna said quietly. "But I never signed anything. She forged my name." That part made my stomach drop. There were copies of checks Johanna had written for things like car repairs and school fees that matched up with the timeline when Felix said she'd blown money on spa visits and delivery food. I began to collect all of it, every scrap, every note. Then I remembered something Renata had done back in 2020. During the height of the pandemic, she applied for relief funds for single parents, even though she was no longer caring for Felix or me. I only found out because she asked to borrow my social security number to speed things up and I flat out refused. She called me ungrateful and said I owed her. At the time, I thought she was just bluffing. But the more I thought about it, the more it bugged me. So I pulled my credit report. To my absolute horror, I saw 3 hard inquiries I didn't authorize, all around late 2020. One of them was from a housing assistance agency in Madison that I had never applied to. I brought the paperwork to Amanda, my therapist, and then to a lawyer Luca knew through work. They confirmed what I suspected. My mother had tried to use my identity to apply for government housing benefits and financial assistance. She hadn't succeeded, but she had tried. And now I have proof. The lawyer, a calm, confident woman named Marcy, helped me draft a cease and desist letter. Nothing dramatic. Just clear and firm. Renata was to have no further contact with me. Any future communication would be interpreted as harassment and dealt with legally. Additionally, I was prepared to file a report of attempted identity fraud if she persisted. We sent it via certified mail and email. She responded the way I expected, a massive, melodramatic Facebook post about narcissistic daughters and how the younger generation doesn't understand sacrifice. She even posted an old photo of me as a toddler with a caption that read, "She wouldn't even have shoes on her feet if it weren't for me." But the damage was done. Her circle, especially the ones who had been at the wedding, had seen enough. Most of them unfriended her quietly. A few messaged me privately to say they were sorry they hadn't believed how bad things were. One of her longtime church friends actually replied to her post, "If this is how you treat your children in public, I can't imagine what they went through in private." That post was gone within an hour. Renata went quiet after that. At least publicly. But I knew she was stewing. And I had one final thing to do. A few weeks later, I called Felix. Do you want to help me clean out Grandma's attic? I asked. She's been asking for months. He laughed. You're calling to ask me to lift furniture, aren't you? Yes. But also, I told him my plan. Grandma had offered to give me her old family photo albums. A bunch of them were up in the attic in sealed boxes, alongside Renata's childhood things, school awards, journals, scrapbooks, even a few boxes marked Mira early years. Renata had left them all behind years ago. She never came back for them. So we pulled everything down, sorted it over pizza and iced tea, and donated what was worth saving to a local women's shelter: baby clothes, books, toys. I kept the photo albums, a few of my drawings from preschool, and a sweater Felix had worn constantly when he was 5. The rest? The rest we tossed. Not maliciously. Not with fire or drama. Just removal. We cleared the attic. We cleared the air. Grandma hugged us both when we were done. Thank you, she said, over and over. I didn't realize how heavy it all was. Then came the most satisfying part. A few months later, I was promoted. Regional Logistics Director. I got a raise, benefits, and work. I posted a simple update on LinkedIn, not tagging anyone, just quietly celebrating. But a few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Not from Renata. From a lawyer. It was a legal threat. Renata was demanding repayment for childhood expenses and claiming I owed her back support because, in her words, her investment in my life had matured. My lawyer laughed out loud reading it. We responded with documentation of her attempted identity fraud, the Facebook posts, and a formal counter-threat of legal action for defamation and harassment. Her lawyer dropped her within a week. I haven't heard from her since. Not directly. I still get the occasional message from an old family friend trying to rebuild the bridge, but I don't engage. Because here's the thing about revenge: it doesn't have to be cruel. It just has to be clear. You want to hurt someone like Renata? Don't scream. Don't cry. Thrive. Lie better than they ever let you imagine. Be happier than they ever wanted you to be. And protect the people they tried to destroy.